Dan, do you mind if my kitty cat hangs out with us for today's episode?
No, I don't mind. That's fine. I see him over there, so I figured we better accommodate him, or we don't want to be rude to any animals here.
Yeah, he strayed to our house years ago, and he's uh, earned his way into the big house, I guess. And here he is. He's made some appearances in my videos.
Ah,
Yeah, he'll just sometimes just be casually walking across the screen. The one episode where I was showing my Titan Attachments ballast box, if you recall, when I was pulling all these things out of my ballast box, the cat was in there too.
the cat was in there.
Yeah, so he's going to hang out with us. If he has an opinion, he'll just raise his paw, and then
Okay.
I'll hold the microphone over to him.
Well, it is interesting that your cat likes to hang out with the woodhounds, but we'll, we'll let it go.
Yeah, he's a championship mouser because I don't know how the mice just seem to gravitate to wood when it's stacked up. I was just loading my truck yesterday and I pulled up a log and there was just this cute little nest that I just ruined some mouse's day. It was dry and like toasty warm in there. And I was like, "Oh, sorry, bud, you got to go."
Yep, eviction notice.
Yeah. And then so he's been catching these. They're not mice, they're not rats. I don't know what they were. We Googled them, and it turned out that they are voles. VOLE. Have you ever heard of them?
I have not.
Yeah, they kind of, I don't know what they are, like a miniature guinea pig or something. They got like a blunt face
Huh.
and a shorter tail, and their bodies are like bigger to their legs. I don't know. It's hard to explain. I've never seen one before. And what we had noticed, what they do is they make little highways through your yard. If you stand back or if you go upstairs and look down into the grass, you can just see like this intricate pattern of passageways under the grass, and
Wow.
that's how they go around.
I
But
was gonna
anyhow,
guess. I was gonna guess a shrew. Have you ever seen a shrew?
no, but I tamed one once, and I filmed it, and I called it "The Taming of the Shrew," and it's been a very successful production.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's been some time after our lengthy hangover from the Paul Bunyan show, and we've finally been able to knock out some recordings of the Hounds podcast, the #1 firewood podcast in the world.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask if how the recovery is going. Do you feel like you're fully 100% charged back up, or are you still a little drained on the battery level?
I think I'm good.
Yeah.
I am. I usually have something sore, so it's nothing different than the Paul Bunyan weekend.
Yeah. It took a few days though, I will admit, but I feel I'm back, 100% recharged, ready to go.
Yeah, well, that traveling and your air travel and all that gets to you after a while.
Yeah.
Even though you're just sitting there, doing nothing
Right.
and waiting, it takes it out of you. I know what
Yeah.
you mean. Yeah.
Well, the one thing we haven't done for a while with our busy schedule is we haven't checked in for our listener mail.
Well, maybe this could be a good spot for our segment called Listener Mail.
Oh, and here we go.
That is our new prop for the Woodhounds podcast. It is Dan's toy steel 500i chainsaw.
Yes, we have live chainsaw. It doesn't cut very well. It's got a nice little chain, but it does the job. It gives us our sound effects we need in
It'll
studio
cut toy
here.
logs, though.
Yes.
Yes.
But we do have a very interesting email that I
Okay.
wanted to go through here and use for this episode. It was from a listener, Jerry, and he had an interesting scenario where I won't read the whole thing because it's kind of lengthy, but basically, he said if we were ever stuck in a situation where we had to produce 20 cords of firewood in 30 days, what 4 pieces of equipment, 2 each, would we take with us to get this job done? So we have to stack the wood. So that's one variable, but we have unlimited supply as far as we'd have to go and harvest the trees from the
Okay.
forest. There's oak, there's maple, there's cherry. So we have
So the
all that.
log supply is not a problem. Let's pretend then that the logs are already limbed and
No.
no,
The trees are standing.
they are standing.
Yes.
Oh no.
Yeah. So,
Well, I know the first thing I would do, I'd have you do all the felling and I'll stand way off to the side.
well, that was going to be my when he said, what would you take with you? Like, let's say we're on an island. So, what would you take with you to the island? Number one, I'd bring shibe.
Yeah, okay. Well, this is the shortest episode
Yeah.
ever. We would bring Shibe and we would just sit off to the side and watch him do everything.
Yep. And then we'd be done. 20 cords,
Okay.
15
Yep.
days.
Well, thank you everyone for tuning in to the Woodhounds podcast.
But he
Yeah.
did provide a list. I'll just like briefly go through a few items, and then I think maybe what we could do is we could just like maybe pick 2 things each from either like our wood yard we have now, or maybe something we saw at Paul Bunyan that we could take with us.
Okay.
But his suggestions were like a chainsaws, excavator, tractor with a grapple, log ox, pickaroon, splitter, processor, dump trailer, ATV. Axes and wedges, which never I would take those because I'm not swinging an axe. Not for 20 cords.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that would be kind of something a little fun here today. We could kind of talk through and hash over the pros and cons of like if we have 4 things, 2 each, only 2 items each we can bring.
That's it.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I think the first thing you gotta have a chainsaw, I guess, huh?
Right. That would be if you need to fell trees and harvest lumber, or harvest the logs from the forest, I would say you need a chainsaw.
Yeah. So let's think of this here logically. We have to get the trees on the ground.
Yep.
We if we're gonna if we're going to buck all the logs, we could still use that same chainsaw, but we would need another machine for splitting because I'm not going to swing a maul for 30 cords.
No.
So we would need to move the logs somewhere if we had a machine, and then we need a way to stack them. Well, then we would need a machine to make the firewood.
Right. Yeah. So you kind of have to think about that whole workflow process. Do you want to fell and buck in one location and then take or haul the logs to a location, buck them, split them, and then haul the splits away? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I got my start going out to the woods and cutting trees down. I would cut them down. I wouldn't split them, but I would load the rounds into my truck and then drive them home and then split them at home.
Right.
So it just seems to me that if we're going to have a workflow, we would need to. So again, we're going to have to decide if we want a big engine, because if we were going to split the logs with a log splitter, I would probably want to split them where the trees were fell, because I'm going to assume that there's shade there and we could work in the shade.
Ooh.
And then move the stacks, move the splits out, so that we would need a trailer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to have to decide how I'm just going to say this from experience. There's no way. Well, there's a difference between what do you want to do and what must you do. Because I would not be able to do 30 cords.
20 cords.
20 cords, and I couldn't
days.
do 1 cord a day with a chainsaw and a log splitter. I'm sure that some people out there can, but not this guy.
Yeah, no, I'm in the same boat. So I don't know if one of the pieces of equipment could be like a processor, because then that, because if you have unlimited supply of timber to harvest, you could then just be selective and, cut everything straight and just haul the logs to a processor.
Yeah, and only cut down the logs that'll fit through it.
Right. So in that case, we would just need a chainsaw and then some way to move the logs to the processor.
Mm-hmm. Like a skid steer with a grapple.
Yep. Or would you prefer a skid steer, tractor, or like excavator?
Huh. Uh, well, I don't know, an excavator would be nice.
So we've got one thing for sure. We know we need a chainsaw.
Yeah.
So now the trees on the ground. I kind of think of an excavator as that you can pick the base up and kind of chop the top off and then turn, swing, put the log somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah. I think you probably can't go wrong with any of them. A compact tractor, a skid steer, or like a mini excavator. But if it were me, if I had all three and I was allowed to pick one, I would probably pick the excavator. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like something where you can keep the tracks far out of the busy area and just reach the boom in and grab. It's got to have a thumb on it though.
Yep.
Obviously.
Yep. With the thumb. Yeah, I don't
Uh
know. I know that skid steers are kind of nice because they do let you get in there close and work in confined
huh.
areas, but with the excavator you could just clear out any underbrush you wanted to move.
But where the skid steer or the tractor would have an advantage is you could put on. Well, I don't know if they make those big buckets for an excavator, but you could like bucket around a whole bunch of splits,
Oh yeah.
and hold them up at waist height and stack it like that, so you're not bending down to pick it up off the ground to lay it back on the ground somewhere else.
Hmm. Yeah, we might have to think about this. The other thing is that a tractor or a skid steer would also allow you to potentially pull around a dump trailer to move wood, or
Uh-huh.
or like you said, just use the bucket. So,
Because it wouldn't be our dump trailer. If it gets beat to pieces by an excavator bucket, then so be it.
yeah, yeah. I don't know that. Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. The tractor and the skid steer give you think a little more mobility as far as like if you had to move distance,
Yeah,
moving product. But the
and I think
excavator,
the skid steer would be more reliable in muddy ground because
yeah,
it's gonna rain.
right.
So I would choose. I've changed my mind,
Okay,
and I'm an adult, and I'm allowed to change my mind. I'm going to go with the skid steer.
I would agree. I think that would be the most versatile piece of equipment for whatever application, wherever you are. I think you can make that work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. I would imagine they got a hitch on the back of them, don't they? To put the dump trailer on them. Or we wouldn't even need a dump trailer because that would be an extra piece of equipment. I would say that we'll just take the grapple off and we'll put the bucket on. And it's a newer skid steer with that remote button for the release thing. So
Right.
you wouldn't even have to get out of the skid steer to pull the arms up on the quick attach. Yeah, I like
Yeah.
it, and it's
There you
got an
go.
unlimited full tank of fuel.
Yeah, he did say in the email like things like fuel, food, water. That's all available, unlimited supply of whatever we need. So
Okay,
we're good
yeah,
there.
and our skid steer is going to have air conditioning.
Yep.
Okay,
And a
I'll,
cooler of Dr. Pepper.
and I'll run the skid steer. All right, so we have a
So
chainsaw and a skid steer.
yes.
So
Now,
okay, now what are we going to do? Are we going to buck rounds and take them over to a splitter, or are we going to have a processor?
Well,
And
that's
that's probably going to depend on the kind of the wood we're going to be dealing with.
right. And this is where he didn't have a processor in his list. So let's assume we can't have a processor. So we're going to need, I would think the next logical thing we would need is a log splitter, a hydraulic log splitter.
Well, I snuck in my luggage my poof machine, and I just poofed us a processor. Problem solved.
Well, that takes care of the bucking and the splitting,
And
and
we're all done. That was everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Wood Hounds podcast.
we do have to stack it though. Oh,
Yeah. So I'm a little biased here. Why hydraulic? I think we get a super splitter. I think we get a kinetic splitter.
well, I don't know. Depending on how snarly the wood is. Although, if we're able to pick and choose, maybe. But
Yeah.
the other thing is, with some of the hydraulic splitters out there, you're able to have a multi wedge, so we could be producing more quickly.
And it doesn't say how small the splits have to be.
Nope.
So we could just run. We could have a big auto split box, or not even a box wedge, just a big 4-way, 6-way knife, a hydraulic log lift, and an auto. What do you call that thing?
Auto
split?
cycle.
Auto cycle. We got the auto cycle, and we just bang out. So that we would have the bucket for the skid steer on, and the skid steer would be spun around on the output side of the splitter, and we would just start banging out rounds into the skid steer bucket. And I would demand that we have a big one, a big oversized bucket.
Now, I just wonder if that additional attachment to the skid steer would count as an item, a grapple and a bucket.
No.
Okay.
Well, even if it didn't, we could still do it with a bucket. We just have to be more precise balancing the log, and we could find a chain that someone left behind and ferry the logs like that. Yeah. Or we could just drag them into place. Yeah. We can get by with one or the other.
Yeah, but I think the grapple would be more handy. So let's just say we can have a grapple and a bucket. So we've got we've got a chainsaw, we've got a skid steer, and a splitter.
Yep.
One more item.
Yeah, I think we would be fine with, just a horizontal, big, beefy. It's got to have a log lift.
Yep.
Yep. And we wouldn't use a conveyor, because that would be our fourth item, and we would have our skid steer catch the splits, and it can then transport the splits to where it needs to be stacked.
Yes. However, here's one thing I just thought of. That would mean that we would be tying up the skid steer while we're splitting, when it could also be bringing more logs to the splitter.
Yeah. But I would think if we're doing it together, we would probably double up on the labor of each step.
Well, that's interesting coming from you, because I've been in your wood yard when people are around, and like somebody made the comment on your live stream, you assume the supervisor role pretty easily.
I would walk over to my 1984 Caprice Classic and open the back door, and I would get my white helmet sitting in the back window. And then I would put it on, and I would walk around and point.
Yes.
Yeah. So, no, I would think that, we would fell and limb, and then the skid steer would drag the logs out to a central location. And then when we would have a good supply of those, then we would get the splitter out, turn the skid steer around, then you and me would start splitting until the bucket got full. And then from there, we would either just stack it off of that or just dump them onto the ground, and then come back and keep splitting till all the splittings Done.
And then stack.
Yeah, stacking.
Yeah.
God. Yeah.
Because we only have 30 days to get this done.
Yeah.
So
Well, we can't. Yeah, there's no stacking machine,
no,
so
no,
we would be the stacking machine. So that would be we would have to if we just carried on a 1 cord a day, we got it in the bag. And
yep.
we could even take a day off when both you and I say the heck with it today.
So we do have one more spot to fill. So would you fill that with like something like a picaroon or some type of hand tool to assist?
Okay, so we do have one more tool
Yep.
at our disposal.
Yes.
Wow.
Because
What could
sometimes
it
those
be?
smaller things are overlooked as being very handy when it comes
Uh-huh.
to production.
Well, I think you make a good point, Dan. I have found the hookaroon to be a priceless tool around the yard. And I could sense a big pile of rounds, and you know how like you get your log splitter right up against them, but as soon as you start splitting, you got a pretty big distance between the next round and the log splitter, and that gap keeps growing.
Yes.
And like something like a hookaroon, you could sink it into the log and just drag it on the ground
Yeah.
to the, you know, that could be our choice. But what about like, is there anything else on the stacking side that would
I
help?
don't think so. Just a multiple pairs of gloves, I think, is all we would need.
Yeah. We could use bags. I'm down on bags, but this could be a situation where they would benefit us because we could just chuck all the big. Well, does that bagging it count as stacking?
No.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't know. What do you have? I could go with a small tool like a hookaroon. What do you?
Yeah, I totally agree because like I said, I think sometimes those are overlooked in the benefit they provide just in saving the exertion on your body just from
Yeah.
bending over, picking up rounds. I mean, once you start using a tool like that, it actually I think that would be one of the key things we would need in order to get this 20 cords done in 30 days.
Yeah. I I can speak from experience. I went my whole life around firewood until 2 years ago, and I got my first hookaroon, and it was one of those, wow, where has this thing been my whole life?
Yeah.
And it's always the most simple, elegant tool, which has the biggest impact. You know,
Yep.
it's like living your whole life without a shovel. And then you've been digging holes all your life without a shovel, and then one day someone gives you a shovel, and you're like, "Holy cow, this thing's awesome!"
Right. Yeah, that's one of the things, like, if we think back to Paul Bunyan, you walk around and you're just in awe of all these big machines and all the stuff they can do, and
Yeah.
then you forget, oh, yeah, something as simple as a picaroon really
Uh
makes a
huh.
difference.
Yeah. I had learned that there is a difference, although it's subtle, between a picaroon and a hookaroon.
Oh,
It's just the shape of the
the shape of the
spiky
hook.
thing.
Ah, okay. And
Yeah,
which
yeah.
do you prefer? The hook or the pick?
Well, all I ever had was a hookaroon. I don't think I would appreciate the difference. But they claimed like the hookaroon just has a itty bit of a
Hook?
hook to it, which makes it hold the log better if you want to pick it up off the ground.
Okay.
Yeah. When
Yeah.
you get one and you start using it, the first time you start using it, man, you just sink that thing as far as you can into the log. Because it's cool. But then you realize you can't get the darn log off the end of it. So then you start learning there's like this touch about it where you just sink it in just enough to hold the log, and then you can pop the hookaroon right out of it when you set the log down where you want. Yeah.
Yeah. So all right, so we've rounded out our 4 items. We
Yes.
have a chainsaw,
Yes.
we have a skid steer
Yes. With air
with
conditioning.
bucket and grapple.
Uh-huh.
We have a log splitter, hydraulic log splitter
Yep.
with multi split wedge
And an auto cycle.
and an auto cycle.
Yep.
and a hookaroon.
Right. Because stacking is stacking, you know. If me and you have to do it, then so be it.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even say it has to be on pallets or off the ground. We'll just stack it and go.
Yeah. So 20 cords in 30 days would be what, like 2/3 of a cord a day if we went every day. Is
Yeah,
that
well,
right?
it's 20 chords and 30. That's what I call fantasy. There is just no way. There's no way I could ever do that.
And
When before I had all my machines, I had a, a triaxle delivered, and I had, in roughly 6 chords to cut up. Man, it took me weeks. You think you're gonna knock it out, and you never do.
yeah,
But then again, I wasn't, confined to a desert island with nothing else to do.
right.
Yeah.
But would you have a preferred workflow process as far as like would you want to get all the trees felled first, or would you want to do like felling and bucking in the morning, splitting and stacking in the afternoon, or would you like what's
Hmm.
your preferred work style as far as start to finish?
Yeah. That's all depending on the weather and the season. But if we're on a desert island, I would assume that it's hot all the time.
With no
So
rain.
the most labor intensive would probably be the stacking. So that would be for the evening.
Yep.
Yeah. The felling could have all been done in one day to get like 2 or 3 days of splitting and stacking,
Yeah.
and just break it up like that.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't have to be like one day, one chord,
No. No.
although it could. But it depends, that you might have a good day of felling trees, and it's going to rain tomorrow, so you want to get all of the logs drug into one spot, out of the mud and into the grass, kind of a thing.
Yep.
Hmm.
Yeah. I prefer that kind of that break in the action. Like if I have a lot of rounds bucked up, I don't like to just split nonstop for hours and hours. I like to split for a while, go stack, maybe buck a little more, maybe split a little more, and kind of run a rotation around the different workstations. Just I don't know, I just like breaking things up like that.
Uh,
Otherwise, it just
yeah,
gets to be too much of the same.
some people are very disciplined, and they have their process, and they stick with it forever,
Yep.
and I'm not. I'll mix stuff up, and you know
Yeah.
I think it probably because I get bored, and I gotta have some variety in my life.
So you mentioned you were going to man the skid steer.
Yeah.
So I guess that leaves me felling the trees. So keep that thing a
And
long ways away.
yeah, you'll be doing the felling, the splitting, and the stacking, and I'll be in the skid steer. Yeah. Well, I'll come out of the skid steer for lunch.
Yes, and
Hmm.
Dr. Pepper breaks.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, I would be in there with you. We've got a task to do. We're gonna do it together, by golly. I'll
That's
let you
right.
ride that. I'll let you drive that skid steer every now and then.
Yeah. Well, sometimes though, it's there's another situation when you're working with people. It's always best to like kind of work towards everyone's strength. So if
Uh-huh.
if my skid steer skills aren't up to par, it wouldn't make much sense for me to be driving the skid steer around all the time because that would be wasting time and
Yeah.
not being efficient. So sometimes it is good to recognize where your strengths are and then, you know,
Yeah.
not be afraid to say
Well,
that.
maybe we wouldn't even need a saw to fell trees. If I was in a skid steer, I'd probably be banging into them and knocking them over like that. I'd have Dr. Pepper spilled all over the inside of the glass of the skid steer from.
As long as you don't have to load a log truck, you're fine.
Yeah, gosh, that was an experience.
Yeah. So I think we nailed it down. I think we can do this. I think if we were given 30 days to produce 20 cords on a very resourceful desert island, we'd be able to do it. We'd have
Yeah,
the
or if we could trade in the hookaroon for one outside with shibe, that could be
yeah.
our number 4.
Like I said, then we'd have like a 2-week vacation on the island. We could sit down.
Yeah,
relax for 2 weeks, and Ty would have it all done. And
yeah, I would say 20 chords. That's it.
yeah.
All right. Well, that was an easy one, Dan. I think we need to have a challenge next time. So if there's any other scenarios out there that you can think of, send it to us to our email address, which is
thewoodhounds@gmail.com.
all right.
Yeah, I think this was a fun little thinking exercise. What would you really want? You know, especially coming off the Paul Bunyan show where you saw all kinds of stuff, and you know your wish list just was huge. Like, oh, I could use that. I could use that. I could use that. Oh my!
I would have gotten one of those gigantic mulchers and just shoved the log right into the whole tree into the side of it, and then I would have just raked all of that mulch into a cute little row and say, there, it's stacked. It's just split real small. I'd have everything done in 1 hour.
And
then I'd take the rest of the 30 days off.
You didn't say how small the splits could be, so there you go.
Yeah. We got to find one of those machines, Dan, and do an episode about them. I'm still fascinated by those mulchers.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Something.
Yeah, they were, and that's the other thing. So maybe we should do an episode of what's the most amazing machine at Bunyan that you'd want to look at more or try to use.
Yeah, I'd have a hookaroon standing in front of one of those gigantic mulchers. Oh wow! All right, Dan. Well, I thought this was enjoyable, and I want to thank everyone for listening to the Woodhounds, the most popular firewood podcast in the world.
Yes, appreciate all you Woodhounds out there, and yeah, if you have an idea, if you have an idea of what 4 things you might want to take, send us an email on that as well.
Oh yeah, that'd be interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so I and my cat and Dan want to tell everyone, have fun, be safe, and
have a great day.